Welcome back, everybody, to the Spokespeople Podcast, brought to you by the Omaha Bikeway, serving the Omaha community for 25 years. Everything you need in a bike shop and more. I am your host, Dave, and our other host, where's our other host? So it's just going to be one Dave, no waiting, because FDR, Dave, was unable to make it today. And he's very disappointed about that, as always. Dave is usually a very timely man. If you know Dave, you'll know that he's literally like a Swiss watch. That Swiss watch has been buried, smashed, drowned, but he is still ticking. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but we're doing one better. In this case, we get to introduce you on the 14th episode with Dan Jennings, a.k.a. Dan the SRAM Man. That's what we call him around here. Dan is a regional rep for the SRAM organization, and we're going to talk to him today about all things SRAM. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave. This is going to be fun.
It's probably more fun with Dave not being here, to be honest with you. But I say that lightly. We miss Dave. So, Dave... Dan, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. We've been wanting to get you in for a while, but your schedule's just been crazier than, I'll get up. Sometimes I think you're busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest.
I feel that, too.
Yeah. So you have been around the industry forever, right? What got you into cycling? We ask everybody this. This is the first question we always start off with. What got you into the bike world?
So Forever started in 1989. And, I was in college, had friends that were riding and got invited. So I didn't have a bike. And, went to a pawn shop, grabbed a Schwinn Traveler for $20 because that's what I had, and went for a ride with them. And at that point realized that bike was a piece of crap and I needed to work on it. So took what, few tools I had, tore it down, repainted it, start building it back. And the last thing I needed to accomplish was truing the wheel, and I didn't have the tools to true the wheel. So I took the back wheel into the shop, and that was True Wheel Cycling in Council Bluffs at the time. And I can't remember what it was. We'll say $5, $10 to true the wheel, but that's money I didn't have. But I could buy a spoke wrench. I think it was $2 back then to buy a spoke wrench. And so I did that and took it home, and took me a while, but I figured out how to true the wheel. So I go back in there, and Steve, who was managing the store at the time, he's like, "Did you get that wheel trued?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he wanted to see it. I was on my bike, and he looked at it, he goes, "Do you want to work here?" So okay. I'm like, well, I'm in college right now, but yeah, I do. And so I got my start there, but it goes a little further down the road than that, because 1989 is the year Greg LeMond won the Tour by 8 seconds.
Yep.
Starting at the shop, I sold that Schwinn to somebody. I actually made money on it after I fixed it all up, and then bought my first, I'm using air quotes, real bike, right?
Right.
And then Greg LeMond wins the Tour in 1989, and that last stage, by 8 seconds, and that's probably what got me hooked. I just, got into racing at that point and just enjoyed being on the bike. And that's also where my career started. But I've been through a lot career-wise in the last, 1989 now, 35 years.
Yeah. I was a freshman in college at KU.
Yep.
But I had started riding a couple years earlier. But Greg LeMond was a teammate of Bernard.
Yep.
And it just, got me hooked into it. A buddy of mine was into it, and he introduced it to me. And then I within the first year, I rode Brand the first time. It was like Brand 7, I think.
Yeah.
So it's weird how... in all the stories that we've had, how many times the name Greg LeMond has come up. Our silent but ever-present producer, True, is shaking his head yes.
You must be interviewing a lot of Gen Xers then.
I think so. We've interviewed a few younger people, and they didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
But I do think that his influence within the cycle community bleeds down to them, and the kids and the people that they watch today were all influenced by someone who was influencing it all. It's like 7 shades of Kevin Bacon.
For sure.
It's like 7 shades of Greg LeMond. And that's what I'm starting to notice. And it's kind of an interesting observation, I think, because, those people have such massive influences, and a lot of kids today don't even know who he is.
Yeah, Greg LeMond really, spotlighted the U.S. in the global cycling community. It really started us off on a path, and look at where we're at today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's growing immensely. So you started there. You got done with college. You were working in the shop, but then you started getting into some of the. So you worked as a mechanic in the shop.
Yeah. So the first store I worked at was True Wheel. They had the location in Council Bluffs, and then grew to 3 stores. And I transitioned into being the manager at their store at 90th and Fort back in, what would it be, like 91 or so, 91. It was a pretty quick transition. That role, probably the same as it is here, is you kind of learn to do a little bit of everything.
Right.
So, I'm managing the store, managing people, building bikes, repairing bikes, selling bikes. So it was an immersive experience that first, 5 or 6 years. And it was awesome. I mean, I ate it all up, and yeah.
And you're an avid rider too. I mean, you don't just work for SRAM. You ride a lot of bikes.
I do like to ride them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think isn't it? If you think about it, the thing you love to do, and yet you've made a career out of it.
Oh, it's like any relationship. We've had our ebbs and flows. There's been years.
Oh yeah, no, I've been divorced. I get that.
There's been years where I didn't want to touch a bike. Might have only rode, couple thousand miles on the road, which when you think about 365 days a year, it doesn't take much to do that. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So then when I first met you, you weren't with SRAM, although I think you were representing SRAM.
Correct. Yeah, I was an independent rep, and representing SRAM amongst, a portfolio of other brands. Yeah.
Right. And now you're exclusively with SRAM.
I am. Yeah, I'm employed directly by SRAM to manage the Midwest region.
And what all does the Midwest region entail for you?
So from a geography perspective, it's everything from the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, all the way to Ohio, basically. Wow. From a people perspective, we have 4 field guides working in that region, and they have, markets built out to support those retailers.
Right.
And their effort goes several different directions. It's broadly supporting retail success. So what does that mean? Making sure they're educated on our products, and they're excited to offer those products to their riders, supporting them in their outreach in the community. Believe it or not, locally in Nebraska, we do not have a field guide presence right now. That's still open. So, what I've tried to do is support more so at a rider level and stay connected as we are right now, stay connected with the retailers, but support as much as I can local events, local teams, and just be there in that sense. And that's what our team does. Is it's more than just a, hey, here's a new widget. How many do you want to buy? We want it to be a relationship.
Right.
Yep.
So, and for our audience out there hearing the hammering in the background, once again, we just need to remind everybody that we're a podcast about bikes in a bike shop. So you get the benefit of hearing the interviews and the environment at the same time, which is kind of fun. My producer, True, is just shaking his head like, no, that's not fun. I don't find that fun, because he's got to edit all that stuff. So he'll do fine. He's young.
I'm just trying to figure out why Todd's trying to true a wheel with a hammer.
No, actually, he's. I think he's putting on someone's rear brake. Is what he's doing. So now that you're with SRAM and everything like that, you used to have, just a personal question, you used to have just an awesome van that you tricked out. You still have that?
I do not. Yeah, it sat in my driveway. Once I took this role, SRAM was kind enough to give me a company car. So once I took this role, it just sat in the driveway, and I couldn't look at it anymore. So
I wanted that.
Well, you'll be happy to hear my daughter was thinking Jeep Wrangler, so I traded it for a Wrangler for her.
Well, so. I can't complain. I do like the Jeep Wranglers. I do have one myself. Yeah, even my daughter wants one, and she has one. So I get it. Once you have a Jeep, it's hard to drive.
Oh, she loves it too. She loves the Ducks.
Oh yeah. The Ducks are great. That is not the Oregon Ducks, by the way. I'm just saying. I want to make sure that we're very clear on that. Although I just got back from Oregon, and I did learn something very valuable while I was out in Oregon. Bigfoot's name is Daryl, and I'm really close to Ashland, where they have a bike mechanic shop
Okay.
or a school there. So, but SRAM does a lot of online video education and stuff like that. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think it's cool, because people need to understand that when you're a SRAM dealer, the SRAM isn't just selling parts to us. They're helping our mechanics become up to date with the newest technologies and what's going on and how to fix them properly to spec. Let's talk a little bit about that for a second.
Yeah. So, the tools we provide retailers, again, there's layers.
Right.
We have that, Stu Online presence where we have modules available to learn about the product, to learn how to install, set up, and service the product. We also have a technical field guide team. And the idea there is they can support, for instance, Todd is having an issue maybe with one of our products. We can support real time and
Hence
walk
the
him
hammer.
through. Exactly. So Todd, don't be truing a zip wheel with a hammer. We're going to need to get a spoke wrench out for that.
I've got a power drill in the back.
We also have the most immersive experiences are Stu in-person experience. And we have facilities in Colorado Springs and we have in Indianapolis to support in-person training on really the products like hydraulic brakes, like suspension, our wireless access drivetrains, our most technical product. And in-person experience is always the most beneficial, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I've gone through some of those videos and I've found them to be incredibly insightful.
Yep.
Being a rider and being a mechanic, it's two different universes.
Oh, for sure.
It's like watching Grey's Anatomy on TV does not qualify you to do, an endoscopy on somebody. But it is kind of interesting because you learn. But a lot of times it actually causes me to have, at the point where I'm at, it causes me to have more questions because I'm at a very novice level when it comes, which is why I'm not a mechanic, right? But I like to be able to do some of the stuff myself on my own bike, So they do support that from that perspective. So, but SRAM has got, what actually pulled you into SRAM from being the rep dealer? Did they just reach out and say, hey, you've been representing us as an independent. Would you like to come on board? Or, how was that process?
SRAM in 2021 felt that they could serve the dealer needs, and build stronger relationships with a field guide team that was only focused on SRAM. So moving away from that independent representation felt like was the best move. And so as an independent rep for SRAM and various other brands, I was offered the position. In all honesty, I didn't take it right away. And so
I think I recall that.
Yeah. I had actually turned it down out of the gate. And, and Scott King, who is the S in SRAM, one of the original, 4 that started the company, he was at CABDA, the Chicago Area Bicycle Retailers Association, their show in Chicago. And we sat down and talked, and, the next move they were going to make, that was where I was interested. And really the premise behind that is, I've always had this learner's mindset. And even today, I learn something every single day, whether it be about our industry, about people. I got to meet you, True, today, so you can cut that out if you need
to. and you found out you had a connection too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that, this regional manager's position opened up, and for me, it's paying it forward. It's now I have the opportunity, hopefully, to inspire, the next, whatever you want to call it, generation, because I'm not that far away from being over the hill at this point.
Aren't we all, man?
Yeah. And so
anyone who talks about Greg LeMond is probably.
Yeah, I turned 55 in a few weeks, so I'm inside of 10 years.
55.
Yeah, inside of 10 years of that traditional retirement age. So now it seems like I'm on the clock.
Yeah, but it's weird. I just don't see it happening. I don't, because when you think about it, when you really like what you do, aren't you already retired?
I tell people that a lot. It's like I've never had to punch in. I just have always gone to work, and I work in a unique way. I can't do 9 to 5. That's the one thing that I just can't do. But in the independent role, I was able to manage my time how I saw fit. And in this role, the leadership I work for, I mean, they're amazing people, and they give each of us the grace, to work and balance, appropriately.
Right.
There's always that, hey, as long as the work's getting done, right? You can't just, do your own thing. But
And I love that attitude.
yeah,
we're not kids.
right.
Especially me.
And I
At
work
55,
best.
I'm not a kid. But yeah, it's like, hey, here's your task, and here's when we have to have done by.
Yeah. And they trust
Okay.
us to manage the path from where we are to where we need to be.
Yep.
And I work best in chunks, so I can put down 2 hours of real high quality work, but then I need a break. So I'll start early in the morning. I may go for a bike spin in the afternoon, and bite off another chunk in the evening, and a little bit here on the weekends, and it all adds up, and it all seems to work.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's really, that's ideal. So SRAM has got some pretty cool stuff. I won't lie. They've got some really cool stuff. Road, mountain bike, gravel. They're pretty much in every facet of the industry, if
Yeah.
you think about it. And but they got some stuff that's new from Red and new from Zip. You want to talk about some of those things?
Yeah, so we, for the Red story is we launched a new Red 2 by group in May, and then followed up in early August with our new Red Explorer group.
Right.
The high point is, from a product perspective, is the controls. And really what it provides the rider is effortless braking. And this will be hard to really think about when I say it out loud, but the effort at the lever is 80% less than the previous generation.
Oh, wow.
So when you start to think about that, 80%, from one generation to the next, that is huge.
It's a monster.
But how does it impact the rider? It means that wherever your hands are, you're going to be able to reach the full potential of that braking system with very little effort at all. So when I'm on the hoods or when I'm on the drops, I don't have to think about it. I don't need to move my hands to get maximum power out of those brakes. And so that makes me more confident, more comfortable on the bike. And I've used our new levers on the road, obviously, but also in gravel in terms of just riding around for fun, racing, all that stuff.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but stopping's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A brake system that you're confident in will make you a faster rider if that's what you're into.
True.
Yeah. It'll make you a safer rider for sure, no matter what you're into.
100%. But you're right. I guess I never thought about it. I thought about it from the safety perspective, but
Yep.
you're right. If I have the confidence to push and challenge myself because I know the equipment I'm using is going to support me
Yeah.
in that effort, yeah, I might push it a little bit harder.
Yeah. And in those controls, we built in additional button to control actually a couple different things. So you have the shift buttons, right, by the brake
Right.
levers. We built in bonus buttons that can control shifting as needed and do other things within the Axis ecosystem. But they're also connected to our new Hammerhead Karoo computer head unit. And the idea there is that you can scroll, from a data page to a GPS or navigation page, and without taking your hands off the bars, you can manage, that function as well. So, continually thinking about, what the riders are asking for, and that's where we really drive our development from, is the feedback we get from riders and retailers.
Now, are you able to scroll? Because I actually just got an email yesterday, I think it was, from SRAM, and they were talking about that.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a whole chance to dive into it too deeply, but one question I have for you listening to here is, am I able to scroll through the system while I'm riding, though?
From the bonus buttons?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can scroll. So as you can customize the page views that you want to have. And then through the bonus buttons, you can scroll through those page views. There is actually a long press and a short press for each button. So you can assign 4 different actions to those bonus buttons.
So basically, I can change the data sheet in front of my face by using my thumb button,
Or if
buttons or special buttons on the bars.
Yeah, if you're doing a cross race, for instance, if you want to do lap times in practice or do lap times in a race, you can assign that action to the bonus button, and you hit it, lap times created, and then just keep rolling. Every time you roll around the start finish, just hit that button.
So it's really good for racers, but it's also good for people who are just training to be fit.
Yeah, I use it a lot when I ride, especially because, I travel 12 states and I'll
Right.
get into places where obviously I don't know where I'm at, where I'm going. So the GPS functionality is huge for me, being able to find routes, even if I just want to navigate blind. And that's where this comes in super handy, is I can see where I've been. So worst case scenario is I can always backtrack and follow the breadcrumbs. And it's not crumbs, it's a black line on my my head unit, but I can always find my way back to where I started.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and those are primarily for road. Have you put anything like that on for mountain bikes yet?
They're fully functional on a mountain bike.
Okay.
You're wearing a Trail Fest t-shirt right now,
Yep.
right? I have the route from last year's Trail Fest on my GPS. I tried to use it, but that route, there's so many trails in that area that connect and cross over. It was a little difficult, but I managed. And
Okay.
but absolutely, you can use it there. It doesn't have the connectivity with some of the popular, mountain bike apps out there like Trail Forks, but we are looking at solutions. We're always looking at,
Sure.
new and innovative ideas.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so what about Zip? Would we talk, that was red, right?
Yeah.
And then the Zip is
So Zip is, most people know Zip as a wheel brand.
Right.
We also do, handlebars, seat posts, stem, tires, and some other accessories.
okay.
The big launch this year was a new Explore gravel wheel. And we'll say we broke the mold.
You did.
Yeah. First impression in the first dimension usually sets the tone is the idea of that rim. So where the tire mounts, the inside dimension is 32 millimeters. If you compare that to our 303 Firecrest, which is optimized for a 30 millimeter tire roughly, that has a 24 millimeter ID. So a dramatic increase in terms of the ID. But the inspiration behind it is, setting the sidewall so it's more supportive with the tire at lower pressure, which means you're going to get better, traction. You're going to have better performance in loose conditions, which is gravel. Gravel's
Right.
100% loose conditions. So again, leaning back, the objective is to improve the rider experience. And I've had an opportunity. I've been on those wheels for about 6 weeks. No, it's August 1st. So I've been on those wheels for almost 3 months now. Wow, time flies. So I've had a chance to race them and ride them. I've hit stuff extremely hard to the point where, believe it or not, my bars rotated. I had a hit that was so extreme that my bars rotated, and yet I was able to keep going. Nothing happened to the rim. Nothing happened to the tire. And this is in a race I did, the Pony Express Gravel Dash, beginning of September. And I was fully expecting to have to pull off and get out my phone and figure out how I'm getting back to the start. But, man, I just kept going.
Nice.
Yeah. I also had to figure out how to get my bars rotated back,
Right.
On the fly, because I was towards the front of the race and I didn't want to give up positions just to do that. So
How'd you finish?
fifth.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Well, it was the short one. It was the 65 miler. So
You don't have to justify it.
yeah.
I mean, it's like fifth. I mean, how many people were in the race?
I want to say in the range of 100 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So top 5%.
Yeah.
Top 5%.
The big story is of the top 5, 4 of us were Gen X or older. There was only one kid in the group.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was pretty happy about that part of it.
So you've got some cool things that I've seen on mountain bikes too. The flight attendant.
Yeah.
That one is kind of a little bit mind-boggling. So explain that whole system to us, because I think that kind of revolutionizes a lot of problems as well for the rider as well. It makes it simpler for them.
Yep.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I'm curious.
So flight attendant, and again, I want to start with this. Our number one objective in new product development is to enhance the rider experience. And so in thinking about that, think about everything, all the input the rider has to do on a full suspension mountain bike at the handlebars.
Right.
You've got shifting the rear derailleur, right? Or shifting the drivetrain. You've got braking. You might have a dropper you've got to manage. And then you have your suspension. And today's modern suspension systems, they typically have 3 modes to them, which would be, there's times you want the suspension locked out if you're climbing or if it's relatively smooth terrain. Then there's what's called a pedal mode, where it's open but not fully open, so that it's managing the smaller bumps or high speed type stuff. And then you've got full open where you might be going into some G outs, that kind of thing, and you need the full range of travel. What Flight Attendant is doing for you is it's managing that through our Access ecosystem all on its own. And so you're able to take that remote off the handlebar and let Flight Attendant do that. And the way it does it is it's capturing data from the suspension itself. It knows, how hard it's hitting, how much it's moving, all of that stuff. But more importantly, it's capturing rider data. We have a pedal sensor, or a power meter works as a pedal sensor, that's capturing, rider cadence, rider power input. We can see, how far the bike is leaned over. I can actually feel it activate if I'm going through kind of a G out berm in a turn, that kind of thing. I can hear it activating when I'm riding. So just doing Lewis and Clark, for instance, I just did that race and I did the marathon. So 3 hours. I guarantee there was well over 1,000 events where my suspension changed in that 3-hour ride. And that you compare that to somebody who's riding a manual system, how often are they actually making an adjustment between open pedal and closed? It's nowhere near that. So now I have this automated system managing that all for me. I can focus more attention on the trail and having fun or winning or whatever your thing is. Yeah.
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 So is there a computer in it, or,
yeah.
There is a computer in it.
There's always a computer. There's always, hardware, firmware going on with these, but it is another component of the mountain bike access system.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's connected to the drivetrain. It's connected to the crank in terms of cadence and power and that kind of thing. It has its own sensors to pick up what the suspension is doing, the lean of the bike, the speed, all of those things.
And if you think about it, all those elements to the rider, if they eliminate that, how much do those types of adjustments slow them down?
For the average rider,
Yeah, if they're racing, taking the time to do that as opposed to it automatically doing it for you, it has to save you, seconds. But seconds matter in a race, even minutes even.
Well, we've...
For a long race like that, it's probably minutes.
Yeah, at the pro level, we've done the math. And typically it's, 1.5, almost 2 minutes that we're saving a pro level rider on a UCI World Cup course. So if you translate that to, we'll say, a local Cat 2 who's racing for an hour, it's going to be probably the same. Wow. 1.5 to 2 minutes, because you're always in the optimal suspension setting when you're running Flight Attendant. It's doing the work for you. You're not. Because what ends up happening is a rider, regardless of how many laps they're doing or that kind of thing, fatigue starts to set in, and you just quit doing a lot of things. And the first one is usually the suspension and maybe the dropper. They quit messing with that, and then they quit shifting. And we're figuring out ways to maintain optimal performance in suspension and braking, drivetrain, all of that, in situations where the rider input may or may not be there.
And I'm just calculating that in my head, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's, in the race categories, you have age groups, right? You get different. So that you could basically, add 6 to 7 years off your life to race against a younger group and still be competitive.
Yeah.
Because of the adjustments in that, which would force you to have to train a little bit harder, which means you're going to get in better shape. And then when you go into your own age category, you're just going to smoke them, right? You're just going to look like a superstar. So maybe I'm going to look at investing in some of those.
Yeah, and you don't have to take my word for it necessarily. I'll bring up a local rider, Brian Johnson. I know he's on Flight Attendant now. He raced it at Lewis and Clark, and there's a great example of. He's not my age. He's older, but riding at a level of some of the younger U23 riders like Dylan McNeil, competitive with riders like Dylan McNeil, I don't think he ran Flight Attendant at Dakota 5.0, but I think Brian got 4th there.
Nice.
So yeah, it's neat to see what it brings, to the table for different riders out there.
I hope that Brad Allen is listening to this because he was an amazing rider.
Yeah.
And he got second twice, I think, into Dakota 5.0. how would this have made the difference? You know what I mean? Like,
Who knows?
because
Yeah.
one of them, I think he was only down by a minute
Yeah.
or a minute and a half or something like that. So if he makes up 2 minutes, he wins by 30 seconds.
Yeah. I'll put Brad on a pedestal for the rest of my life. He's an awesome human, especially on a bicycle.
Yeah. Especially on a bicycle, but even off a bicycle, he's just a great dude.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to take our capitalist moment and go for a commercial break. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about a couple more things and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's take that break. All right. We're going to take a second here to give a shout out to our sponsor, The Bikeway. For a quarter century, The Bikeway has been the premier destination for all things cycling in Omaha and beyond, with a legacy of passion, dedication, and community. Discover the latest and greatest from top brands like Giant, Liv, Transition, Santa Cruz, Scott, Bianchi, Sunday BMX, and DK. We've got the perfect ride to fuel your adventure. More than just a shop, explore our extensive selection of apparel and accessories. And the Bikeway Certified Service Department has you covered, from basic maintenance to suspension work to custom builds and everything in between. And while you're here, treat yourself to a delicious cup of coffee. As a rider-owned and operated establishment, you can trust that we're dedicated to providing the best possible experience for fellow enthusiasts like you. So join us at the Bikeway, where every ride is an adventure. Here's to 25 years of riding together and many, many more. All right, and we are back. Once again, we want to thank the Bikeway for sponsoring the Spokespeople podcast. If you were listening closely, and I hope you were, you heard the comment about coffee. An interesting fact about Dan is that Dan buys one of his coffee blends from us. We use a local roaster here in town. We try to keep everything locally. We use Reboot, so a shout out to Reboot for that. But Dan buys his coffee from us. We're just having a little bit of that and enjoying it as well. What coffee do you get?
I usually get the Guatemalan.
The Guatemalan.
Yeah, it's got kind of a deep, we'll call it chocolatey flavor to it. And Jamie got me hooked on that a couple of years ago. So
yeah, no, it's tasty. I like that. I like the Sumatra. We also got the Bikeway blend. I was thinking of putting clever names on all of them. I sent a text to Jamie while I was out in Oregon, and I said, "What do you think of this?" He goes, "Well, we already do that." I go, "I know that, but we don't name everything. Why don't we just give them names and people have names?" I can't remember some of the names I thought of doing.
So do you know what the Bikeway blend is?
100% Colombian, I would call Crank It Up. That's what I would
Okay.
call that one.
Okay.
Just because the caffeine dose is a little bit higher. Sumatra would be like a downhill ride. Sumatra's a very mild wake up.
What's the roast on Sumatra? Because I like the Guatemalan because it's a medium roast.
It is a medium roast. Yeah. I'm not crazy on the darks. Sometimes if you don't get the right dark blend, it almost tastes a little burnt.
Right.
Kind of like if you have to you burn your toast, but you scrape most of it off, but you still got that burnt flavor.
Yep.
So, but no, the coffees are fantastic. And the cold brews. Have you had any of Jamie's cold brews?
Oh yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Just have one. Mm-hmm. Me on two is like a jackrabbit on crack. It is not. They're pretty high dose caffeine. It'll put a rock star or a monster to shame. So yeah, I didn't realize that when I did. I was like, oh, this is so good. I'm going to have another one. And then like an hour after that, I was literally bouncing off the walls. And that's not good because I'm already.
I was gonna say you're already high energy. So
Yeah, I'm already high energy. You give
I
me
couldn't
that.
imagine that.
So I just got off a 24-hour international flight. I need a cup of coffee. That's the one for me.
Yeah, I hear that.
So we've been talking about a lot of different things, from you're getting into the cycling world back in 1989, working your way in bike shops, learning the trade and the profession, working with SRAM, some kick products that they've got. I'm really curious about the flight attendant. But I'm also really curious about, because I like gravel and I like mountain biking.
Yep.
Those are my two that I like to do. But I had to get rid of my gravel bike a couple of years ago when I had cancer. Doc said you can't ride. So I kept my mountain bike, but I'm going to get a new gravel bike. But I'm really interested in that product because it'd be nice to be able to flip back and forth and the data sheets and know where I'm going and what's happening. So, but with SRAM, I think their motto is something along the lines of people product
Culture.
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, their culture. You guys do a ton of community, globally, nationally, locally. Let's talk about some of those things. Let's start with globally. Let's talk about some of those ways that SRAM supports literally the industry, top to bottom.
Yeah, so when you talk, we'll start globally, right? And when we talk about community effort globally, what stands out at SRAM is our World Bicycle Relief, and the idea is that we're providing a transportation for students, for we'll call them frontline workers, so nurses, teachers, whatever it might be, in parts of the world where that that type of transportation doesn't exist.
Right.
The big story, though, is more than just the bicycles. It's creating the infrastructure and training people to support those bicycles as a needed resource in those areas. So that was something we learned. And World Bicycle Relief, I think, is approaching 20 years old now.
Wow.
And approaching over 1 million bikes given to these villages and communities. And something we learned right away is you can drop as many bikes as you want into an area. If you don't have the infrastructure, it's not going to work, or it's not going to be sustainable. So making sure an infrastructure is having people there that can build, repair, maintain those bicycles.
Right.
Having a distribution network set up so that they can get the supplies they need to build, maintain, and repair those bicycles, and all of that. So making sure that it's sustainable, and then building from that, as we move forward. And that's been a great thing for us. On a personal level, we do, more locally, we do Pedal to Empower. So every field guide in market connects with an event to support and fundraise for World Bicycle Relief. Pedal to Empower generally happens in the beginning of June, and you'll see it through their social media and through other social media platforms. But that's a big part of what we do is just do whatever we can as a field guide team to support what SRAM's doing, what World Bicycle Relief is doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you ever put the little jars in front of cash registers at bike shops?
They do that. So we have some bike shops that will do, like Hy-Vee has that. Would you like to, what do they call it? Roundup. So they'll do stuff like that. They'll have a jar at the counter with a WBR sticker on it.
Okay.
We have done WBR events, with retailers to help fundraise, and that's part of Pedal to Empower. I'll give an example. Keeley, who's our field guide in Indiana, there's just a local short track mountain bike race going on, got with the retailer, got with the race organizer, and I sent him one of the Buffalo bikes. These are the bikes that we put in these places, in these villages and communities. And I sent him one of those to display. Well, he didn't tell me, but they ended up doing laps on the Pedal to Empower bike on basically a short track, a mountain bike short track, and had some fun with it. But, the bigger story is they did a great job of fundraising for World Bicycle Relief.
Nice.
So we like to do fun things and, do the best we can to support those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then nationally, you guys also have a lot of programs in place as well.
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S., for instance, we're connected to a lot of organizations that are supportive of putting more butts on bikes.
Right.
From a retail perspective, for instance, what does that mean? Is, instead of fighting for, market share, if we all, collaborate and grow, our sport and the pie gets bigger, we all benefit, right? So, our connections with organizations like People for Bikes, like the National Bicycle Dealers Association, like IMBA, and there's a lot more going on there. I don't know them all, but that's what our support is all about, whether it be financial. We have SRAM people that sit on the boards of those organizations to be supportive. I'm connected, myself with the NBDA, supporting their, that dealer network effort. And all of that's super beneficial in getting more people on bikes and having the experience they want to have, living the dream.
And you've been a wealth of resource for us here at the shop as well. I mean, I know Jamie talks with you routinely, and when you go to those types of meetings, you bring a lot of that information back to us, and we need to actually probably get to some of those ourselves, to be honest with you. I keep trying to send Jamie, but Jamie's more of a, I don't want to travel.
Well, I'll give the MBDA a plug. Is they have, you don't have to go anywhere. It's great if you want to, and it's great if you do. But what they do, in terms of their forums, their meetings, they have these member mingles,
right?
And the collective, they lift each other up. It's a pretty neat organization. So I'd encourage you to join and dip your toe in the water that way and see what it has to offer. And
I'm definitely interested in that. So, but locally, your support for the races, the events, I mean, SRAM's always there.
Yeah. So, like I said, we have 4 field guides working in a 12-state market, and unfortunately, we don't have a field guide in Nebraska. So that's on me because I live here. I'm in Omaha. With my role as a regional manager, it's difficult for me to make retail visits and that kind of thing. So the approach I've taken is support at a community level as much as I can. So locally, supporting the Nebraska Off-Road Series, supporting the teams in the area, and connected with the bikeways, Prairie Bloom, Omaha Velo,
our own bikeway team.
The bikeway team. We have support built in for those teams and several others in the area. Just as importantly, supporting events, in what we can do. And a lot of times it's just simple stuff. It might be course tape for a cross race or setting up, what do you call them, a checkpoint at a gravel race or that kind of thing. And even participation. So I have a road background, but when I pin a number on, it's always on a gravel bike or a mountain bike, which is hard to explain to people. But a lot of it has to do with my upper body is all messed up and I can't ride that stuff every day, but I do like to race it still. But back to what we were talking about, it's just wanting to be supportive and get people excited about being on a bike or being in an event or whatever works for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we did the same thing. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we got the Beast.
Yeah.
We send in a mechanic out there, and it doesn't, we sponsor 3 teams, but I don't care if you're from a different team. Something goes wrong on your bike, bring it over. Yeah. We'll get you back on the trail and get you going. And we do it for free.
Yep.
Like if we got to put in major parts or something, that's one thing, but if you just need a derailleur adjustment or something fixed here or there, we're there to help support the event because those significantly improve the enjoyment factor of the participants who then tell other participants, and you're growing the pie.
Yep.
You're growing the pie. And so that's why I'm going to throw a plug for SRAM. If you're thinking about upgrading parts, you go to every race, I see SRAM there. That's where I'm spending my money. Yep. I mean, that's just the way I am. It's like, hey, these guys support me. I'm going to support them.
Yep.
And the bikeway's there too, by the way.
Thank
you.
Just
throwing that one out there.
Well, and I'll plug that myself because neutral support, I'll leave the name out. I was at an event last weekend and there was no neutral support. And it's a pretty major event. And so as, SRAM has a presence there, we got approached a bunch of times. I'd say 20 plus times, hey, are you neutral support? And we're not. We're not tooled to do it. So the solution we came up with is we connected with some of the local teams that were there and set up and said, hey, can you help if it's needed? So when riders would come up and ask us, we'd point to them and just say, hey, they've got the tools and they've got the expertise to help, but they don't have parts. So if that works, great. If not, we'll need to get you to a local bike shop. But
right.
That's how important neutral support is at some of these events. It's reassuring.
Explain neutral support.
It's what you're doing. It's basically,
we're there to support everybody who's at the event. Doesn't matter what team you're on. We're just here.
Exactly.
We're your go-to guy.
Yeah, and that's, when I was a rep, I would do neutral support for, the local cross races, some of the mountain bike stuff. And, I'm under a SRAM tent, but that's only half of what I'm working on. I'm working on, other brands of product. And, that's to some degree, what we do is just go out there and do it and don't worry about it. Don't be judgmental or biased. And
so if you think about it as neutral support, we're like the outhouse. Everybody gets to use it and it's free.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
I mean, you got to think of that's brilliant.
And it's putting the rider first. You know, it's making sure they have a great experience. It's not about the product they're on. You know?
No. It's just, I want everybody to have a good time. And I noticed that there was a lack of that. And there's always a need for logistical support. Always a need for it.
Yep.
And, you know, it means you got to volunteer your time to do these things and stuff like that. And for a shop, there's a cost and an expense to doing it. But, you know, if there are no riders, there is no shop.
Exactly.
Right? There is no industry. So how do you help support the growth of it? And I think it's kind of like some of the events that they have around town. They got all kinds of different, you know, the Roland to Colin ride. They used to have the yellow ride.
Yeah.
You know, things like that, social events as well. A Bike with Mike Day, which we had his brother on here, talking to him about that. And, you know, we go and support those things so that the people who are showing up to support a good cause can be successful in showing that support.
Yeah.
So, and we always have a good time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've even been at events where I've had other shops there, and I'm just, you know, joking and having a good time with one of the other shop managers. You know, I don't care that he's at another shop.
Right.
We're here for the same reason, man. We're here because we just love what we do. So I don't know. I kind of like the community in that perspective. Yeah. People are more along the lines of, I might wear this jersey and you wear that jersey, but who gives a, you know, let's get out there and do this. And people are having a good time and they're staying fit. So I like it. I think it's great that SRAM definitely supports us. We actually have a SRAM banner hanging in our podcast room, you know, because I got another one I want to put up too. I'm going to put it out there so more people can see it because SRAM has been a huge supporter of our shop as well. So we've appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Dan, I want to tell you, I was really excited about having you come in. That enthusiasm has not changed, if not been elevated, because I was excited about getting you in here. I'd love to get you back right before the spring, especially if you got any new products coming out. We can always record and play it later so we don't hit any embargoes or anything like that. But anytime you got new stuff you want to talk about, you have an open door. You're more than welcome to give me a head up and say, hey, I got this new cool product coming out. I'm like, do it. Let's bring it in. Let's talk about it. And we'll try to get Dave here next time, you know, see if we can't set his alarm clock properly.
He'll come running in the door in about 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, he'll probably show up with, are we ready to go, guys? A little while ago, but that's all right. And that's Dave. You know, you got to love him, right? So anyway, Dan, thank you very much. Folks, that's going to bring us to the end of episode 14. Do us all a favor and hit the like and the follow button so you can catch all the updates and the new episodes that are coming up and down the line. We've got another list of more people coming down. We're hoping to surprise a couple of you. Until then, everybody, keep riding. Be safe.